Okay, so I am going to go over the scripts in this video for the Unity game that we've been building. I'll be using the PowerPoints or the PDF that I used in class to go over each of the scripts in more detail than I was able to do in class. Some of these scripting tips I will talk about as we go through the different scripts as well. I'll point out the comments and conditional branch tests and GUI and assignment for variables and all of that stuff. But this is sort of a reference for that, and we'll be going over them in the order that they are in this PDF. So we'll start with inventory pickup. We might briefly look at shooter, but I've already gone over that in a video, so I don't really think I need to go over it again. We will need to talk about inventory pickup though, and door trigger and pickup manager. So let's go ahead and get started. So if I look at these scripts inside of my scripts folder, I have them all here, as well as some other ones that I'll be giving to you for doing some other functionality on this door to take you through to a win state. But right now, I want to focus on these scripts, and I'll talk about the other scripts in class. You might see some of the functionality as I go through and show things in here. But, we'll talk more about those scripts in class. So what you're doing now is working on the pickup of your collectible items. I've created some collectible items in here. So if I look around a little bit, oh, I'm in game mode, that's why. So if I look around here, I can see my outpost, which has the door, and I'm going back to the original door that I had, not the one that I did in class. And I've got my pickups here, again, the original ones that I created. And I also want to talk about some things that are on our FPS controller. So to start, let's go ahead and we'll select a script here, and we'll start with inventory pickup, which is going to be the one that's keeping track of our public static int, which is called integer variable, which is called collectibles. I try to put these in places that makes the most sense. Again, coding is logics. And so you want to try to have a logical setup, and you want to try to use object-oriented coding, which means that the things that you're doing in the scripts go on the objects that they're gonna happen to. You can make some choices between that, especially when it has to do with like the player interacting with some object. Do you put it on the object or do you put it on the player? It depends. But all of this stuff in inventory pickup is on the player, and that's what it says here as the first comment after the class is that script that goes on the first person player controller. And remember that green is comments, and you can see there's quite a few comments in this script, and it's not that complicated a script either. So we're keeping track of stuff that the player is going to pick up, and therefore it goes on the player controller. And the player controller back in Unity is our first person controller that we can see right here. And it's got some different parts to it. You can see that I actually have some extra parts than what you would have, but the main thing is the FPS controller and then the first person character, which is actually the camera. You can see that's my camera view there when I select it. And we do have a script on the camera. It's the shooter script, and we added also an audio source to it in the components so that we could play the sound that happens whenever we shoot something. And so that shooter script, again, I went over it in class and in one of the other videos that I recorded. So I'm not going to go over that one again. I will go over another throwing script that I'm using to throw my flare. So my end condition is to throw my flare into the fire and light it. So I do have that. It's similar to the shooter script. So we will be going over something similar again. But first, let's look at the FPS controller, which is the main part of this first-person controller. And we'll go to the bottom of that. There is an audio source already there because we have footstep sounds. And then we have the inventory pickup script. You can see I've also got a flare pickup script on here. We'll talk about that in class. I'm going to go over the inventory pickup script. You've got two things in your inspector, in your editor here, that you can plug in. One is the sound that you want to happen when you collect an object, and the other one is the canvas for where the HUD or the collection HUD is. And so when you created your collectibles GUI that shows how many you have up in the upper right, it creates a canvas automatically, and it's actually the canvas that is plugged into this one right here. So let's go look at that script. This is mainly used for picking up things. So if I run it real briefly, just to make sure we know the functionality, when I go to pick up a collectible, the HUD comes up in the upper right here, the number. Now, I could also put some text here that says like skulls 1, but it would be independent of the 1 because the 1 is actually looking at the variable that's in the script, and any text is not 1. So I didn't put any text in here right now, but you can totally do that. And there's also going to be text coming up when I walk up to the door here. It's going to give me some kind of text hint. So let's stop that and go and look at this script. So when we open it up inside of our Visual Studio, we're going to first see that there's some variables here. Public static int means that it's a global variable. Whenever you have the static word in there, it makes it something that can be referenced from all over, from any other script. And that's important because if you have to track something, you have to change it, you have to send values back into this as you pick different things up, then you're going to need to have it a global variable. And local variables are specific to this script. They're only used in this script. They may be public, which means that you can see them in the inspector and you can drag something into them or set the numbers depending on what they are. We do see we have another couple public local variables here. One is to put in an audio sound for picking something up, and then the other one is for your canvas object. And that's going to allow you to turn on your HUD. So, and HUD incidentally means heads up display. I think we've talked about this before in class. So as we go down and we look at our start and update, these are the two main scripts that are two main procedures that you have in your script. There's nothing in update for this one because there's nothing that really needs to be continuously checked. What it does have, though, is in start, it's setting the collectibles to start at 0. That's what we would want when we're collecting objects, is to start at 0. And then it's got the HUD dot enabled. So this is dot syntax. It's part of the class. And it's when we put the object in for the canvas, it's looking at the canvas and all the things that canvases can do. And one of them is be enabled or disabled. And if enabled false, if enabled is equal to false, then it means you've disabled it. You can't see it, you've hidden it. And when we go down here, when I pick up something, then that's when the HUD is going to turn on. And there is a procedure here. So these are custom procedures. You have 2 built-in procedures, start and update, which are always in there. And you may use them or you may not use them, but then you're going to put your own custom procedures. And in this case, I have a pickup and a HUD on. And both these say void, which means that there's no data coming out of them. There's no return statement or anything. There's no data being spit out after these run. All that's happening is it's running whatever's in the curly brackets. And there's also nothing going into these because there's nothing in the parentheses after the name. They're empty. So that means that there is no inputs into these procedures either. All they do is they run the code that's in the curly brackets, and there's a start and an end for that. And the first line for the pickup is it plays the sound, and audio source play clip at point just means that it's actually creating an audio source at a particular point where this object is. So wherever my first-person character is, it's going to take that position, transform.position, and it's going to plug it in and create an audio source that it can play the sound with. That's a little different than just calling the audio source and playing the sound. And I think, with the first person character, because it's playing other sounds like footstep sounds and things like that, this is a better choice because it's not going to mess with any of that. And it's playing the collect sound, which is being put in up here at the top when you plug your audio clip in. After it's doing that, it's incrementing the collectibles global variable to make it 1. The very first time you run this, and it'll just keep incrementing it every time this runs. And then it's running HUD on procedure. This is how you run a procedure in C#. You put the name of the procedure and the parentheses after it. If there's nothing, no inputs, nothing has to go inside the parentheses, then you just leave it blank. And semicolons end each one of these lines of code. I do have comments after each line as well with the double forward slashes. And then under HUD on, that procedure is really just enabling the HUD, the canvas. So it does have an if statement here inside of this procedure, and that's just a check and see that it's not already enabled. If it's already enabled, you don't want to just keep enabling it. There's no reason for that. It's better to do a check and see. And so if you say if, and inside the parentheses is your condition, and that's going to try to evaluate it to true. And what this is saying with this exclamation point at the beginning of it is it's saying not. So whenever you see an exclamation point in front of something in C#, that means not. So what this is saying is if not collect HUD is enabled or it's false. And so if it's false, then it's going to go ahead and enable it, make it true inside of the curly brackets there. So this is an important thing. When you do an if statement, you put the condition inside of the parentheses after it. If it's whatever it is, in this case, if it's a global variable, it's just going, and especially a global, or not a global variable, if it's a local variable like this, which is for the canvas, being enabled, and enabled is a Boolean, then that automatically will be tested to see if it's true. And if it is true, dot enable means true, then it would come out as true. But if you have a exclamation point in front of it, it's actually testing it to see if it's false. And so that's just a shorthand for that. It's a shorthand for writing collect HUD dot enabled equals false. Okay, so that's that script. There's not a whole lot to it. Now that script is working with, if we go back here and look at this, it's working with the door trigger and pickup manager. Both of those other scripts are referencing inventory pickup. And it's those scripts that are actually doing the calls to this script to run pickup, and pickup is running HUD on. So let's go take a look at those scripts now. So door trigger is the first one we'll look at, and door trigger is a script that goes on the door component with the trigger. So the door object that has the trigger. Let's go find that inside of our scene. So if we go look at our door hierarchy, we have the door itself. You can just orbit around here. We have the we have the door itself, but that's got some parents on it. So the door itself is down here within this hierarchy. That's the actual mesh object, and it does not have any kind of script on it. All it is a mesh object. It's got a mesh renderer, and it's got a box collider. And the box collider is to just keep you from being able to walk through the door if you run into it. And that's it. It's got a material. What is parent to that is the hinge, which we placed over at the side and parented the door under. And that's the one that has the animation on it. And it does have a script on it. It's the door manager script. So we'll come back to talk about that. And then the very top node, which is parented over the hinge, is an empty that I created. And that's the one that has the box collider set to trigger. So it is that object that you want to put the door trigger script on, and then you plug in all the stuff for it and set whatever needs to be set here. So if you look at this, I did add an audio source to this as well as a box collider set to trigger, and I scaled that box collider using my center and size to make sure it was nice and big and sort of sticking out on the outside here and not going too far on the inside. And so we go back to this door trigger script and look at it. We have lots of public variables that I've added here. And these are just to put in information that's going to be used in the different parts of this script. We need to play a locked sound, so it's got a public audio clip variable. we have a door light, which is over the door, which changes colors. So that's of a type light. And notice I'm using camel casing on all these variable names. There's no spaces. They start lowercase, and any new word has an uppercase letter. If you go back and look at those names in the inspector, you'll see that it actually capitalizes that first letter and puts a space in, because it knows what camel case is, and it converts it and puts it like this inside of the editor. So we go back here to the script. I've got something for the text hints GUI object that we have to create. I've got a public integer collect target, which is the an integer variable for the for how many collectibles you want to set as your target number. So for instance, you know, if you want the player to collect 3, you put a 3. If you want them to collect 100, you put 100. Whatever number of collectible objects you're going to have, you're going to plug it into this inside the inspector. Public string hinge name. This is actually a string type, and because it's a name. And I did want to just show you how strings work. They're really just for names, and you're going to type in the name out in the inspector rather than say drag the object in. Dragging the object in is going to be like a game object or an audio clip or a light or even a text object. Those are all dragging objects in. When you put string here, it's asking for a name. You just type the name in. Canvas, you're going to drag the canvas object into this one. And then we have an outpost light also that's inside of the outpost, and I'm also controlling that as well, so I'm plugging that in. I have some colors here. This is how you can set custom colors. You create a new color and use your RGB values, and you can look at those numbers directly inside of the editor if you create a color. So for instance, if these are light colors, so if I were to go find my door light, for instance, it's this one, you can see I have a color there. And if I go click on it, I can see what the RGB values for that color is. It's 0.09, 0.42, 0.17. There's a lot of numbers, but you only need to use a couple decimal points to get a very similar color. And that's what I'm plugging in there. That's what I'm putting in the script, the actual RGB numbers for the colors that I chose just in the inspector, just copying over sort of a version of those. So I have an orange, I have a green color, which is not an average green. Now, if I was using an average color, a regular color, I would put color.black, or I would put color.green or color.red. And actually, I'm using some of those in here in a couple of places. So when you first walk up down here, and it's locked and you don't have anything yet, it's this one right here. I'm using color.red. And so you can do it that way too. That's sort of like a shorthand of not having to put in all the RGB numbers. But if you want a special color, your own special color, I thought the green was just too much. And I wanted a little more subtle green that matched my background. So I chose a color that I thought worked a lot better. It's a lot darker than the super bright one that comes up if you just use dot green. If you set it to dot black, as I'm doing right here in the start, that means you're basically turning it off. A dot black light is just a light that's turned off. So I'm turning off the light to start in my start procedure, and I'm setting my outpost light intensity to 0 as well. I could have put that to black too, but this is just another way of turning it off. Notice that when you're using numbers like this with decimals, you have to put the F after the float. The F is for float, and a decimal is a float of type float. And whenever you're actually putting the number in for that float into your float variable, you need to put the F after it or you'll get an error message. After that, I've got my update, which is running continuously. And in that, I've got something for if you have already opened the door, if you've already gone in and you've got all your parts and you've gone up to the door and you've checked it, this is what that is for. And it's running continuously because if you have it in the other parts down here, the on trigger enter, then if I pick up all of my collectibles, it's not going to turn green until I walk up and try the door, if it's in the on trigger enter down here. But if I want to be like a ways away from the outpost and I get my last collectible, if I want it to turn green so I can see it turn green from a long ways away to tell me to go and check the door, and also give me a hint to go and check the door, then I need to actually put it inside of update instead of in the on trigger enters. So that's what I did here. I've got some if statements. If statements inside of another if statement, as I have here, is called a nested if, or a nested conditional. And else statements always go after an if statement. You never put an else statement by itself. So what happens here is it goes to the first if statement and it checks to see if inventory pickup dot collectibles. Now that's that global variable inside of the inventory pickup script. And this is how you reference it, by writing the name of the script dot the name of the variable. And then I'm saying is greater than or equals to the collect target number, which is my target amount of objects to pick up. If I'm greater than or equal to that, and I use the greater than or equal to because sometimes if you're picking up a bunch of stuff, sometimes it'll actually pick up more than one. And if you overshoot your target, you won't be able to get in your door if you have it equals. You want to usually put greater than or equals in case some glitch happens and it goes slightly over your target, then you'll still be able to get in your door. So I'm putting that in there to check to see if we've got the number of collectibles. And then I'm also checking this win condition, which is different than the script that you have, because I've added this after I added the win condition to my scene. And I added this because I need to bring up a win GUI, and this other GUI, because it's running inside of update, will actually continuously come up until the end of the game, unless I put something in here to say, okay, don't do it after a certain point. So I created a win condition variable that's a global variable so I could make sure that it doesn't come up when my win GUI comes up. So this says that you have to have the number of collected items, and this is how you say and, two ands next to each other like this, and not win condition. So the win trigger win condition has not been turned on. It's not true. So if that's the case, then you can go to the second if conditional, which says that if the hint HUD is enabled, and technically I didn't need to put equal to true there. I could have just said enabled. So if it is enabled, that means that I've got all of my things and I've actually come back all the way to the door and touched it. Because that HUD is only enabled when you pick up your first object. So if I've got all of them, that means that I'm actually touching the door after I have all of the objects. So if that's true, then go ahead and set the light to green, my custom green, and then send a message to run the show hint procedure and put into that argument, the door is green, I should check it. So we'll look at the show hint script, but there is a text hints script that I'm sending a message to run a procedure inside of it called show hint. And that procedure has an argument going into it that is looking for some text, a text string. And that's what I'm putting in here. So that's telling the player that, okay, go check the door. And then if that's not true, if that HUD is not enabled, then that means that it's already past the time that I've got my last thing, opened the door, gone in to the outpost, and I'm going there again for some reason. So for me, later on, I might need to get bunches of flares. So I might be going in that door multiple times. I don't want those same messages coming up. So, but I do have something that I want to happen is that I set my outpost light to have the correct intensity. In this case, it actually, the first time this happens and you go into the outpost for the very first time, or right after it happens, I guess the second time you go into it, the light turns on. And it actually runs through and happens because this is an update. It's not even the second time it happens. It's after you've opened it that first time, and the very next game loop, which is before you even have time to go into the outpost, the light comes on. So this turns on the light inside of the outpost. So the main things in this script is this on trigger enter procedure. This is a built-in procedure to Unity that takes an argument for whatever you collided with, and you give that argument. It's an argument, but it's a container for the thing that you collided with, and it's giving it a collider name, which is in this case collide. And so you use that inside an if statement right after you declare this procedure by saying if collide, the thing you collided with, dot game object tag, which is the tag on that thing that you collided with. If that's equal to player with a capital P, then do everything inside of these curly brackets. Again, we've got a bunch of nested conditional statements inside of this if. So it's first checking that, did you collide with the player? If so, then it's going to run through these. And this is just a series of if statements. It'll go to the first if, then it'll go to the else if, then the else will come last. And it's checking to see certain things if you have a certain amount of collectibles. So the first one is looking to see if you have greater than or equal to the target. If you do, then that means that you have them all and you're ready to open the door. So you run this door check procedure. This has to find, this is finding, this is where you plugged in the hinge name, a text string that's coming in here, and it's going to look for the hinge object, and it's going to look through all the scripts on that hinge object and find the one called door check. Door check is actually a door open procedure. It's going to open the door, and that's in the door manager script, which we'll look at in a second. So after the door gets opened, it's going to take the HUD and turn it off because we don't need it anymore. So it's going to take the canvas and basically turn off the checkbox next to the name in Canvas to hide it. And then it's going to send a message to show hint to put an empty string in there. And again, I'm doing that to make sure that no matter what, those hints don't come up. Like the last hint, which was it's green and you should go check the door. I don't want that to come up when I do my Win GUI. So I'm making sure that all this stuff is hidden or turned off. You can't, I'm not deleting it. I'm not destroying it because I might need something in there. And the canvas is kind of tricky because there's only one canvas node, but there's all your GUI stuff is under that one canvas node. And I am doing stuff to that canvas node. So so it's you don't want to just destroy it all because then none of your GUIs are going to work. So then it goes to the else if statement and it's looking to see, do you have collectibles greater than 0 and less than the target, meaning 1 through 3 or 1 through whatever is the or however many your target is. So if your target is 4, 1 through 3. If your target is 1 through 3, if your target's 3, then it's 1 and 2. Doesn't matter what it is. That's looking for the stuff in between. And for that one, it's going to play the lock sound. So it's doing a play one shot. It's finding the audio source on the hinge and playing the lock sound, which is basically one shot is just play the track once. And then it's turning the door light color to orange, my custom orange. And then it's sending a message that the door is still locked, but you're on the right track. And then else is the last thing. It's going to check and see. Well, it's not going to check anything because at that point you have 0. You don't have any. It's the only thing left. And so in that case, it's going to turn on the HUD because you've picked up something, or you've tried the door, and your HUD's going to turn on. It's going to say 0 up there. And then it's going to do the lock sound again. And then it's going to make the door light red and send the text hint that maybe I need something to open the door. And that's the end of that script. After that, you basically have your trigger end and your class end. So all of that is to kind of manage the door. And then there's actually a door manager script that script is referencing or calling to run this door check procedure down here. So if we look at what that is, that script is attached to the whatever object has the animation on it. And in my case, it's the hinge object. If I go back and look and select the door hinge, that's the one that has the door manager script, and it's also got the animation component with the door open and door close animations. It's also got an audio source that I've added to it. And I want to go in and control that with this script. And so I've got these variables here. I need to keep track of whether the door is open. So it's a Boolean and it's set to false to begin with. You can set things up here. Usually I do it in the start. I usually just don't put any value on it. I just end it with a semicolon and then put doors open equals false down here. Again, I wrote these scripts a long time ago, so I don't remember why I chose to do it that way. Maybe just to show that there's different ways you can do it. I kind of prefer putting it in the start, but that's fine. It doesn't matter. It works actually the same. And then I've got a float, which is for a door timer that's going to happen whenever the door opens. It's going to wait a certain amount of time and then close automatically. And then I've got a door open time. It's a public variable, float variable, so you can plug in the number that you want in the inspector. I've got some public variables for the sounds that the door is going to make, an open and shut sound. And then I've got some strings here. These are also public, and these are for the names of the animations. So if you go back and look in the inspector, you can see them here. Here's the door open time. I could set that to whatever amount of time I want. 3 seconds seems like a good amount for me, but that might be too fast for some people. And then I've got a door open sound and a door close sound, or I'm using door open for both, but it doesn't really matter. Open animation is a string, and I'm typing in the exact name of the animation up here, exactly as it was originally set to. So door underscore open, all lowercase, and door underscore close. Just type those in, and those are strings that will go in, and it will find those animations. So that's all the variables. There's only the door timer in start is starting at 0. You do want to make sure it starts at 0. And the timer itself is inside of the update. The reason it's inside of update is update runs continuously. So as soon as the door is open variable is set to true, this first if statement here inside of update is going to be true. It's false by default. I put it to false at the top here. And so the only way it's going to get to true is down here. If someone runs door check, down in the bottom here, door check is running a procedure called door. And the first line in door is is open equals open check, which is the input for the door procedure. So when you have inputs inside of or arguments going into a procedure like this inside of the parentheses separated by commas, each one of these things have to be put in when that procedure is used. So up here you can see the procedure being used: door open sound, true, open animation. So those are couple variables and a just value true being put into these arguments down here, and those will always play the open sound. True is that the door is open, so it plugs it into here and says, okay, once we play that and run that procedure, the door is open. And it's not going to get back to close again until this update runs. So it's checking if door is open. If that's true, as soon as the door procedure gets run, that's going to be true. It's going to start a timer using time.delta time. That is the actually game time that's running. So it's taking that game time and it's sort of streaming it into this door timer. So the door timer will start going up. And once that door timer gets greater than whatever you set for the door open time at the top here, this is set to 3 seconds. Whenever that becomes true, becomes greater than that, your timer is run out, and it's going to run the door procedure again, only with the shut sound, false, meaning the door is closed now, and the shut animation is going to play. And then it resets the timer, because next time you go to the door, you want the timer to be back at 0 again. And it's not going to reset up here. That's only for at the start of the game. So it has to be reset. The door check procedure is a very simple procedure. It's just running the door open procedure. It's checking to see if the door is already open. If it's already open, you don't want to try to open it again. So it's got to be false. It's got to be closed. And then it'll run the open procedure. And if you remember, it was in door trigger that we were running that. So down here, we're running it in this very first one right here. Transform.find, hinge name, send message, door check. So that opens the door. And then the door procedure itself, all it really does is it sets whether the door is open or closed, and then gets the audio component and plays it, and gets the animation component that you specified and plays it. So that's how the door manager is working. The other, let's see, those are the two scripts that were working with pickup manager, or sorry, not pickup manager, inventory pickup, that's on the player. It was those two scripts. Now, picking up objects, of course, that goes with this, because you have to pick up the objects to get the door to open and all of that. And that's got an object pickup script that's on the collectible. And that's going to reference inventory pickup to run the pickup procedure. And so let's just take a quick look at that one too. Object pickup. So here's the object pickup script. I think I already have it open. It's the one that goes on the pickup prefab itself. It's what's going to make it spin around because it's got a public float rotation speed, which you're setting to, well, by default it's set to 100, but you could replace that number in the inspector with anything you want, or you could change it here in the script if you want a different default. And that's being plugged into in update for this object that's going to have it. So in the case of mine, that's going to be on these objects here. And so this skull is going to have all of that. And you can see there's the object pickup script on the very top level of my skull object, which has the box collider here, the trigger for picking up. Because I'm using a Megascan, that is just an empty that came in with just a transform, and I put the box collider and the object pickup script on it. So everything's rotating on these actually, because it's at that level. It's not at the level of the mesh, which in this case, the mesh only has the mesh renderer and the material. I also have a light here that's child to it, so that's spinning around as well, and a fire complex that's spinning around. So all of that's under the object pickup script, or part of that. And then other than rotating it with this transform.rotate, which has a vector is 3 numbers in one, and in this case it's XYZ. You're creating a new vector 3, which means there's 3 spaces separated by 3 arguments separated by commas. And the first one means X. The rotation, the middle one means Y rotation, and the last one means Z rotation. And so I'm rotating only because 0 and 0 is in the X and Z. So Y is the only thing that has anything in it here, and it's the rotation speed times the delta time, which is just pumping numbers continuously into and multiplying by the rotation speed. And so that's just the positive number. It's going to go clockwise and rotate the object continuously for as long as the game plays. Down here, the on trigger enter is also on the script because that's where the collider is. The collider is on this top level object. It's a box collider and it's set to trigger. And that's why you're using on trigger enter. And basically, if the object we collide with is player, just like before, then we want to send a message to that object. Somewhere on it is a procedure called pickup, and it's going to run it. And that's inside the inventory pickup script. Then we're going to destroy the game object, in which case everything is gone. This game object's gone. So you wouldn't want to store anything in here or on this object or put anything in this script that's like a global variable, because it is going to be destroyed immediately upon pickup, and then that global variable would be gone. So it's only local variables, if any at all, and it doesn't matter when they're gone. Okay, so there is a pickup manager here, and that goes on the canvas object, and that's just to sort of take your collectibles, your global variable collectibles, and convert it to text so that it can be displayed in the upper right corner on your GUI. And so, you know, that object is on my canvas object. If I go back and look and select my canvas object, I can see that pickup manager script is on there. And the only thing to plug into it is the actual GUI object, which is collectibles GUI. And that's actually the one that has my text for the numbers, in which case I have 0 plugged in. And the script is going to monitor, always track the collectibles global variable, and it's going to take that down here in update. Since it's an update, it's always running. It's going to start the count at 0. It's going to always be looking at that here to see what it is, and then convert it to a string and put it into the text part of that GUI. So .text is where the text is put in for that particular GUI. Okay, so whenever you have these scripts that have to do with GUI or UI, you got to have using Unity Engine.ui at the top. Otherwise, it won't recognize a lot of this UI type of like .text. It won't recognize that. Okay, so we've gone over the door manager and door trigger and how they're working and how the text hints are coming up as well. I think we went over the text hints. Text hints, if I go back to that, actually there is a text hint script. Let me see if I have that one open. I do. So the text hint script is going to be necessary. That goes on the GUI text game object, so not on the canvas, but the actual text GUI object, which is called, in my case, hintext. It has that text hint script on it, and so that's the text that's going to be down here at the bottom of my screen. And you want to it doesn't matter what you put in here inside of it, we're going to change it. But I also turned it off here next to text. And in the script, then you're going to control whether it's being shown or not. And it's also going to, the door trigger script is going to send stuff to this. So it's going to be sending things to this show hint procedure here. And so the text hint script, it's got a text variable, local variable, and a float timer, because the text also, like the door opening and closing or the door closing, is timed in update to just be up on screen for a certain amount of time, then it goes away. So this GUI is false. It's not enabled, means it's hidden by default here in the start. And you're getting the component, text component on it to be able to enable it false. And then you're going down here. Oh, by the way, when you're referencing something, an object that's on here, a lot of times you can just use get component without any specifying. It knows that that's looking for it on this object that this script is on. Sometimes you also put game object dot with the lowercase g at the beginning to do the same thing. Then an update, I've got the timer for the text, and it works exactly the same way as the door timer. In fact, I probably copied the door timer text to make this, or vice versa, because it's running exactly the same. And you got a timer. It's checking to see if the hint ever becomes enabled. If it does, if the GUI hint object becomes enabled, then it's going to start the timer using delta time. It's going to look for that timer to get to equal or greater than 4. And if that happens, it's going to hide it and reset the timer. That's all it's doing. And then down here on show hint, that's what's actually being referenced by the other scripts to show a hint in the middle of the screen. It's running this with an input, and the string input, here's one where a procedure has an input inside. It's got string message. And so in door trigger, whenever we're doing these show hints here, we're putting send message to show hint. That's the name of the procedure. And then the input is put some text in. And so that's exactly what it's looking for, a string message here. And it's taking that message, it's putting it into the text. And then it's, if the hint is not already enabled, if it's not enabled, then enable it and show it. Okay, so that's that script, and how the text hints are then coming up. So I think that's all of the scripts that I wanted to go over here for this particular part. There are other scripts here that I'll talk about. I have scripts for picking up a flare and throwing it at my campfire object over there to light it, and then bring up a windscreen. I'll talk about those scripts in class, but these are how these scripts are working. And I'll go ahead and run it again so we can take a look at it and just verify that they're all working. So here I am. I can either go pick up one of these objects first to turn on my HUD, or I can go and check the door first. I'm going to go check the door first, and I get my red light, I get my message, and I get the HUD coming up. I go pick up one, I see it turns to 1. Pick up another, I'm hearing the sounds, I'm getting the object, and I'm getting my HUD updated it now, it turns to green. I forgot to go up and check the orange one. That's okay. Because that's working. We're opened. We have some flares in here that I'm going to pick up, throw on the door, throw it. Too slow. Pick up another one. Drop that throw it. I missed it. One more. I dropped that one immediately. Obviously, it's not that easy, but I did test it. So, in the game, get rescued. The image that's coming up there is part of my GUI, and then it restarts. I haven't put a start screen in yet, but that gets me to a win condition. So I'll talk about that in class and the scripts that are doing that, and I'll give you those scripts as examples as well. But get your door working and your collectibles working, all of those mechanics before we do anything for the win part of it. All right, talk to you in class.